This is Tech Scene Talks on Tour, the podcast about enterprise technology that brings you IT insights and analyses from events all around the globe. We cover everything, everywhere. Visit techzine.eu for more information, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.
Welcome, we're here at Salesforce TDX 2025. We're talking to Andrew Comstock. He's Senior Vice President and General Manager of MuleSoft, the iPaaS solution of Salesforce.
It is, yes.
If we start with the wall of MuleSoft, did the strategy and wall change over the years within MuleSoft? It looks like it's more positioned to serve Salesforce than it is to be a dedicated iPaaS solution.
Yeah, and I think I'll just say, so first, our DNA really hasn't changed, right? We are still very focused on being the general provider of capabilities. So in fact, actually Salesforce isn't even our number one solution that we integrate to. By far and away the most common, it's very high, it's I think number two, but we actually see other ecosystems being the most commonly used by our customers. And what we see that is, what's really changing is our ability to work together and be effective. But we would just sort of note that the most integrated application in the world, SaaS cloud application, is Salesforce. So our natural affinity to Salesforce has been before the acquisition and continues after the acquisition. And what you're seeing now is a reflection of the sort of switch from the digital transformation imperative that enterprises are under to an agentic transformation. And with Agentforce really leading the charge in agent and agent deployments, there's a very natural affinity for us to do that, even as we continue to remain neutral. We're looking at supporting as many of these ecosystems as possible and making sure our customers feel fully supported by MuleSoft in all the ways that we possibly can.
We're here at TDX. There were a lot of announcements around AI and Agentforce, like you just mentioned. And in some of those, MuleSoft plays a major role.
Yeah.
I think MuleSoft for Agentforce is the biggest one.
Yep.
It does sound like that.
Yes, you're right on.
Yeah. Can you explain a bit what it does?
Yeah. So MuleSoft for Agentforce is sort of a encapsulation of a couple of different components, really designed to optimize and help customers get deployed on agents, right? And bring existing capabilities that we have from MuleSoft to make them more agent friendly. So the two of the headliner capabilities within that are what we call Topic Center and our API catalog. And there's very similar concepts. Topic Center is about making sure that developers can make their APIs ready for agents by adding agent instruction, a key element to make your APIs more effective for agent actions. API Catalog can do the same from the Salesforce environment and can unify across the entire Salesforce platform to make those accessible. So for the first time, a Salesforce user can see APIs across Heroku, MuleSoft, Salesforce, and the Salesforce platform simultaneously in one place, and with a single click, deploy them as agent actions. And again, that deploy as agent actions is sort of a nebulous concept that I'll ground for a second. The agent needs to know how to access the API. So where two developers might talk and explain and ground how that API works, these instructions are the guidance for the agent to know how that API can work. And so this is a great way to power up your agents with third-party actions across your entire enterprise ecosystem. And so we see this as we start making more advanced agents, or we start discussions for headless agents, being a critical capability to get access to more and more advanced actions. And we see MuleSoft, our ability to power that with tens of thousands of customers and hundreds of thousands of APIs and actions that we can make, being an incredible unlock for more advanced agents.
That's a lot. Trying to grasp a bit for the listener on how to look at this, because
fair. Well, I'm too excited. I'm too excited about the new capabilities. That's definitely my challenge.
Yeah, maybe we should split up a bit, because from where MuleSoft comes from, it's creating API connections.
Yes, absolutely.
That can bring in data, but it can also execute actions for an agent in this case, right?
Yeah, so thank you for that, because what MuleSoft's heritage was building what we call a business process in the format of an API. Yeah. And think about this for people who don't know us, this is about connecting two systems together. So you can be things like, I want to integrate with Salesforce with my ERP systems like SAP, or I could bring my Workday data integrated with another employee tracking system. And bringing those things together, that's really what's defined for many of our customers, the business processes that they have, right? This is the behind the scenes pipes that are powering a lot of
It's a connection in the back end that makes two separate software solutions work together.
Exactly.
And on top of that, now you created agents.
Correct. And so now, now thinking about that on top of that with an agent, what we're going to say is agents want to take those same actions. You're going to want to be able to ask an agent, when we said, for instance, a common example is like, book me a reservation. Well, how do you book a reservation? First, you need to think about what location I want, what specific maybe hotel room I would like to do, what dates I would like to have. All of those systems behind the scenes are APIs, all right? And we've created reservation APIs for our hotel providers in the past. What we want to make sure those do is make them available not just to systems that would access the API, but to those agents. And so that's what we're really going to power up, is that final mile step, so that the APIs you've already built are now agent ready.
Okay. Is it fair to say that MuleSoft is also kind of the data fabric to the Salesforce Data Cloud?
That's a great question. I'll go back and challenge you. There's been a lot of definitions of what a data fabric is.
Yeah, so I know. That's why I ask.
Okay, that's a great. So maybe I'll preface by saying, to me, what a data fabric is thinking through the disparate systems an enterprise buys. The average enterprise today is buying almost 1,000 different applications, both in the cloud, on-premise, and deployed to hyperscalers.
Yeah. So in the worst case, they have 1,000 data silos.
Yes, and they live in 1,000 data silos. And the data fabric has always been about, how do I sort of stretch something across those? And in the traditional world, MuleSoft has been a great way to stitch all that stuff together, to bring all those things, and exactly what you said, a data fabric. What we've seen with Data Cloud do is bring it to another level of that by bringing actually into the data itself and help you standardize data and do things like profile reconciliation, where you can actually standardize different systems that have different information on an individual and help you standardize all that together. So the way that we think about it is that Data Cloud is helping you standardize across your enterprise, and that MuleSoft also helps both Data Cloud bring that data in, but then it could basically extend that into the rest of the world, right? And extend that beyond just what you might do from Salesforce. So you can all work in both sort of and this is going to push you maybe a limit, you can work in both a data world and a metadata world, and being able to help standardize that information.
Yeah, because the data and the metadata creates the context for AI to operate.
Yep, absolutely.
So the Data Cloud can connect to some data sources by itself, I believe Snowflake and Databricks and some others.
Yep.
And if you have these, let's say, legacy sources or data sensors out in the field that are not easy to connect to, then you use MuleSoft to leverage that data into the Data Cloud.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what Data Cloud, one of the really revolutionary things about what Data Cloud did is that they brought in what they call zero copy. And so working with the Snowflakes and the Databricks, the other example, and many other examples that we didn't mention, they can bring in data without sort of bringing in the data and work with the information in this place where it is. And so that's a way to connect this information without actually having to move it. And moving the data is a very expensive, very costly way to operate. And so in not moving it, but allowing you to work with it, is a really revolutionary approach. But the challenge is that zero copy it doesn't work for everything yet. And so as you want to start saying, how do I get to the rest of those? And not just legacy applications. And it could be things like mainframes, which are still running around in the wild out there. But
a nice COBOL mainframe at a bank or something.
Yeah, exactly. And MuleSoft can help you bring that data into Data Cloud. But it could also just be applications. One of the things about the 1,000 applications, some of those 1,000 applications in your average enterprise are really important, and some of them are pretty specific. And MuleSoft can help you get into even those specific applications and make sure that we can break down that silo and bring it into Data Cloud or work with it in any way you see fit.
If we move back a bit to MuleSoft and the logic part of it, within MuleSoft, when you created those API connections, you can also build some logic things with if, then, and else. If you the route you should take, or define which route it should take in certain conditions. Now, I saw in the Salesforce workflow builder, which I think is based on part of MuleSoft technology, you can now replace all those if, then, else rules and put an agent in the middle and let the agent decide which route to take based on the event information that's coming in.
Yes.
So I was wondering, can you also put an agent in the ePass module of MuleSoft already, or is that still to come?
You can.
You can.
Yes.
Because they didn't talk about it here. And
Yeah. So as part of our announcement, I mentioned that there are a couple of big pillars. One of the ones I hadn't mentioned yet was actually our Agentforce connectivity. And alongside our Agentforce connector, we also have an additional capability called AI Chain, which does connectivity to other agent and vector database vendors to be able to help drive some of those solutions. But you can actually, inside a Mule application today, replace components of your business logic with agentic-based steps. And so, what we're seeing is a lot of adoption and interest here, because where customers aren't ready to replace their entire system with an agent, but they are very interested in replacing some of that logic. And so in essence, they've got business processes they would build, but as opposed to coding it themselves, they're using agents to be able to replace that. And that prompt is, in essence, is becoming their code. Their prompt is becoming the logic that they've implemented. So yeah, you can do that today with MuleSoft as well.
And is it just as good, or is there a higher fault margin? Because then you need the agent to interpret an event in the right way.
Yeah.
And before you had it really hard coded. If an event is A, you run scenario B.
Yep.
And now now it has to determine by itself which scenario it should run.
Yeah, and what I would say is, I think, like in a simplistic case where you're saying, if it's A, then do this. If it's B, then do this. You don't really need an agent for that, right? No. That's because that's actually not that hard to develop. What we're finding is that actually what you're finding is people are saying, hey, I want to route maybe a good customer. Well, what's a good customer? A good customer might be one with high status. It might be one who spends a lot of money. It might be someone who's brand new that you could project could spend lots of money, right? Like there's lots of potential definitions with that. And where we see agents being really interesting is you could actually say, hey, here's the information I have on my customers. Here's what my customers look like. Tell me if you project that this might be a great customer. And having the agent start doing some of the logic and reasoning gives you more flexibility to do things maybe potentially a little bit differently than you did, right? The routing logic you're talking about can get challenging to describe all the potential scenarios.
Yeah.
And actually asking agents to help bring some logic and some reasoning to that is a way to potentially unlock new use cases that we couldn't do before.
Okay, that's interesting. I also wondered, observability has also been a large part of MuleSoft.
Yeah.
Keeping an overview of all those connections, because what you just said, a large enterprise has near 1,000 applications on average.
Yep.
And it wants to connect them together, and then the EPAS came along, as it may, and said, to us, put everything to us so you can have an overview of what's happening, and we will give you insights. And because if you have direct connections between all the applications and you have to build them yourself, you also have to maintain them, and that's a lot of work, and it's pretty hard. But now, I think organizations were used to managing those connections that they already were using.
Yep.
But now you're adding agents on top. Does that change the way you observe the APIs and how they're being used, or is it kind of the same but just a bit more?
Yeah, so I think the simplest answer is it's the same but a little bit more.
Okay.
But I think the bigger answer, I think the reason that's the heart of your question is that it's actually even more important. Right, the technique that we would do, the technology isn't necessarily something different. We still want tracing, we still want logs, we still want our metrics that drive observability. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that you can generate this across the entire ecosystem, right? Because it's even more critical. Up until sort of LLMs, computer technology was always the same. It was deterministic. You would say, as you said, if A, then B, then C, and it was always sort of operated the same. Agents don't always operate the same. So the criticality of unified observability is really important. And this is one of the things that we're so excited about, being part of a deeply unified platform across the Salesforce ecosystem, is that we're going to be able to bring experiences where you can go from a prompt inside of an agent, to the agent, how it processed, to the agent actions it took. And you can actually trace all the way down the scope. And that's going to be something that we think we can do very uniquely, that's going to provide incredible value to our customers in a fundamentally different way, because that agent is going to be different. And that's going to be something new. It's something we haven't accounted for in sort of our architectures and our designs, where we haven't seen our customers do. But we're seeing customers like Adecco lean into this as a way to unlock new business value, to build new products and new offerings, right? They're a talent management company, and they're reimagining how they think about their recruiting and support functions. And part of that is making sure that they can do that effectively. right? Because the customer doesn't know that they're using an agent, right? That's the whole sort of value, that you're bringing new solutions to market. And they're centralizing that across 40 systems. So how do you do tracing across all those, just as you said? And it's becoming more and more critical and more important in an agentic world.
You're the general manager at MuleSoft, and Salesforce has this AI agenda that's pushing really hard. Mm-hmm. Are they challenging MuleSoft to do things? Or do you have challenges to cope with the speed and the things they require to facilitate them?
So I actually look at this much more as an opportunity. Yeah. And that's a silly thing to say, and I know, like, it's like when you get interviewed, you always say, like, what's your biggest weakness? And you always want it to be a strength. But I'm sort of flipping this on its face. I mean, I fully admit. But the reason I say it's an opportunity is that we're at the cusp of something really big. And mm-hmm. these technology shifts don't happen often, right? We always talk about, it's something new and different. Yeah. But the last time this really happened in our space was about a decade ago with cloud and the digital transformation. Mm-hmm. So as we see this shifting here, we want to lead the way for our customers. And again, I see it as a massive opportunity that we're part of the same family as Agentforce, right? We can meet and work together and collaborate on building better solutions for customers as part of our deeply unified platform. So I'm incredibly enthused about what we think we can do and where we're going to go, because I think that this is going to unlock the next generation, not just of how agents are going to work, but actually the next generation of an iPaaS solution is going to be agentic. And being part of a leading provider of that's making IC in a better position.
But there must be a challenge, right? Not everything goes as easy as it sounds.
No, of course not. Maybe I would joke and say that if it was easy, then anybody could do it.
Yeah, that's true. Right? But I wonder, for example, let me give an example. You have these agents now that work API based on a process, and that's fine because they're not tied to latency, for example. Yeah. But if you have customers interacting with a bot, you have latency, and I can imagine they want to get the latency as down as much as possible.
Absolutely.
And if you're connecting to a bunch of APIs, it can add a lot of latency.
It could, yeah.
Is that something you're working on now to see if you can cut that down even further? Or?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where maybe I'll go back to. It's, as a new technology, I think there's going to be constantly evolutions. But what I'm so excited about is that we've seen customers bring these to production and then give us the feedback, right? Because that's a solvable problem. If it's latency is the problem or accuracy is the problem, those are things to solve that are fun to solve because customers are pushing us to them. Okay. It's much harder for us to theorize where we think the world's going to go and then pick the solution, right? But I think agents have shown us put the line on the sand of where the world's going, and it allows us to then build around it. So yeah, I think you're talking to a group of people who are relishing the change, right? MuleSoft did this 15 years ago, 10 years ago, in leading the charge in the digital transformation and helping modernize an iPaaS. That was the core of what drove our business as we built over the last decade, right? And even when Salesforce acquired us six years ago, we've grown from, I think at the time it was roughly 300 million to a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. We see this opportunities for the agentic world as even being helping us to continue to accelerate. So we see this as an opportunity for us to work together and in a true 1 + 1 = 3 opportunity. And yeah, there's things we're going to have to do differently along the way, but it is something we're leaning into aggressively.
Okay. For the listeners then, the last question. You had some big announcements here.
Yeah.
Is there more to come in the short run that they have to look out for MuleSoft?
The answer is absolutely. Right, we do some great announcements with these big events. You're going to see some incredible big announcements with Dreamforce along the way. But
you already know that there's a big one coming from MuleSoft.
There's some big ones coming.
Okay, good to know.
But I'll say actually just along the way, this is also where we're going to be continuously bringing capabilities. So we don't plan for the announcements. We plan as fast as we can. We've got work that's coming in the next couple months, probably before Dreamforce, where we're going to be actually announcing support for other agentic partners and actually bringing, just like we did bringing our APIs for Agentforce, we're going to be bringing our APIs for other partners as well. Great. So yeah, stay tuned and listen in. We'll have some great announcements both at Dreamforce and actually before that as well.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, for this nice conversation.
I really appreciate it.
And having you on our show.
I appreciate the opportunity, and to all the listeners, I love to reach out and always ping me if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of TechZine Talks on Tour. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. If you'd like more information, please feel free to visit techzine.eu, where we cover everything, everywhere. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll join us again on the next episode of TechZine Talks on Tour.